Thank you all for coming to our afternoon plenary. I can assure you this will be exciting, informative, and very interesting. Not to put too much pressure on our panelists, but it really, every time we do this panel, there are more questions than we have time for. So I guarantee that you will leave having learned something or taken note about something, research or an article that you want to go look into more. So just be prepared, have your pens and pencil paper ready to take some great notes. I'm very proud to present our esteemed panel today for our session on HI versus AI. Everyone know what that means? Some yeses and some nos. Well, we're going to talk about what that means with our panelists. Because I know that there are so many questions that usually come out of this panel, we're going to forego the formal introductions of the speakers. Their bios are all in the app under the speaker section of the conference app, so you feel free to read those bios when you have a moment. But without further ado, I want to introduce our panelists. First, Caroline Burstall from Caterpillar. Yep. And I'll move over in a second. Yep. Roxana Istrate from IBM. Milos Kovac from Honeywell. Yes. Had to get the company right. And Alina Negru from Emerson. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to scoot over there. We did have a moment to prep, so they're ready to get started. I have questions to go, and I know you're going to have a lot. So we will go back and forth with some audience questions and prepared questions to keep everyone on their toes. So my first question actually is going to go to Roxana. There was a recent conference, maybe not so recent anymore, where Elon Musk, does everyone know Elon Musk? Yes, okay, looks like most people know Elon Musk. He has said, that AI is a fundamental existential risk for human civilization, and I don't think people fully appreciate that. There's been some other leaders, such as Mark Zuckerberg, which I think everybody knows as well, yes, okay. They've been a little bit more positive when considering the potential of AI, so you have a positive and a maybe little cynical opinion there. What are your thoughts on the future of AI and its impact on the workplace?
Hello, everybody. First of all, thank you for all being here. That's a very interesting question that I'm sure it doesn't have a right answer. So my honest opinion is that I'm very positive because I see how much AI helps me in my everyday life. I don't have to queue anymore when I buy tickets. I don't have to remember all my calendar appointments. I use Siri or Alexa or whatever assistant to help me, I don't know, remember what I have to buy for the next day, these kind of things. Although I'm not fully positive because we all know about incidents that happen with, for example, autonomous cars. And I think we should be a bit more careful in how we design this and how do we allow people to use this. I'm a bit conservative, a bit more conservative than Elon Musk. Elon Musk. I do not agree with the fact that AI is a risk for all of us because we see very good examples that I've already told that help us in our everyday life. So I think what people miss to say is how many times these AI applications fail and how they lack emotional intelligence, for example, or innovation, or all these characteristics that are specifically for human beings. So I don't think in the next years a robot will completely replace a human being and we have nothing to be afraid of. But that's my honest opinion.
Anyone want to add to that? Milos? No? Yes, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm just waiting for
the next question. Oh, okay. He knew. That's why we're prepared. Okay. So yes, the next question for Milos. Andrew Moore. Does that name ring a bell to anybody? Andrew Moore? No? Moore's Law? Yeah, I heard it over here, Moore's Law. He now runs the School of Computer Science at Carnegie Mellon University in Pennsylvania, in the US. Noted recently that we can program a car to act various ways in a collision to save lives, as we just talked about. But somebody has to answer the questions like, does the car try to protect the person inside the car more than the person it's about to hit? Which is an ethical question that has started becoming much more prevalent in these discussions. So should there be a greater focus on the ethical questions within this technology?
That's a really tough question. I would say one part is ethical, another part is how fast a human can analyze all available information in case of something strange is coming. Because I remember when I was learning flying with the airplane, and my instructor was always talking me, okay, first get around, get all available information, and then make decision. And in the car accident, for example, everything is happening very fast. So if we have technology ready, that artificial intelligence can get a lot of information about speed, position of humans around the car, inside of the car, if they have fastened seat belts, and based on this calculate, it will be always with probability, probably, because even as humans, we are just assuming, okay, what is the best solution? There is no sure solution, and even after accidents, if you survive and you was driving the car and somebody died, you have maybe for the rest of your life, you have a bad feeling because what you can do more. With the computers, it could be same. Somebody will be thinking, okay, what I, as engineer, what I can do more to have better calculation inside of this artificial intelligence, but it will be always about probabilities. So computers, I believe, will be able to faster analyze information and make better decisions. Technology is not ready yet, but that will be the future.
Anyone want to add? Yep, go ahead.
Hello. I would like just to add on the ethical part. As my colleague just mentioned, on the programming, I mean, we are humans, we program the machines, and I think the machines have the capabilities to take faster decisions than humans. But on the ethical part, I believe that what we face now in nowadays, the incidence rate on the streets with car accidents, it's much higher than we would expect to do when auto-driving vehicles will do that. And I believe that that could be also one of the subjects in the universities to be taught for the future cohorts of students.
So we just heard a really great overview on two pretty major sides of the issue, the technology side and the ethical side. We're going to open up for some questions to start. Please wait for the microphone to come over and speak loudly. I think we have one over here. Who has the mics? Over there. There she is. You just say your name and what company you're from.
Thanks. I'm Sarah, and I come from Cummins Turbo Technology. So my question is about the interactions directly between machines and humans. So an Italian neurosurgeon last year, Sergio Canavero, has claimed that we are decades away from performing a human head transplant. And right now there are prosthetic limbs in the world that can be transplanted, fixed to a human, and respond directly to our nerve impulses. So even though we don't have a left hand, for example, our brains can move an electronic prosthetic limb. So my question is, what are your thoughts around the ethics problems, especially with data hacking and things like that, when we're potentially on the verge of being able to combine humans with machinery and artificial intelligence?
You want to take that? Go ahead.
Hello. So interestingly, your example about the human head, I read in the paper yesterday that 2 Chinese scientists are going to attempt a human head transplant next month. So ethically, we're on different ends of the spectrum on this topic. I think in relation to your question, I think we're all going to have to become much more mature about our view of data security and hacking. So data privacy is a good example. So 10 years ago, your computer maybe at home could be hacked, and a small amount of information could be taken. Now your Facebook account can be hacked, and you and all your friends' information can be taken. As we get more cyber bionetic systems, potentially your body could be impacted. I think I'm optimistic that our security experts will kind of keep up, and it will be a constant kind of war of attrition. But I think as individuals, because it will impact us personally much more strongly, we'll all have to become very, very much more aware of what we do and the risks we take.
Oh, hold on, we need a mic. We can't hear you.
So my feeling is that that could be the existential risk that Elon Musk is talking about.
Possible. I mean, my view of the existential risk may be something like a catastrophic stock market crash based on a series of error-rippling algorithms.
Which has almost happened.
Yeah.
Already, several times. Anybody else want to add to that? Okay, I think we had another question on that side too already. And then we'll make sure we don't leave out this side.
Hi, my name is Rochelle Wimmer from the Salzburg University of Applied Sciences. And I have a question about machine learning and bias, because we talk a lot about conscious and unconscious bias, and then the problems that occur because of supervised learning because of the inputs and unsupervised learning because of the algorithms.
Good question. Thoughts? If you want, yeah. Looks like everyone's still thinking about that one.
So again, I must read the paper too much. There's a trial going on in the UK, I believe, about using machine learning to determine whether people are released for police bail. So based on the probabilistic outcome of them reoffending. I think here unconscious bias is really important. So depending on the individual that programmed that algorithm, they may be biased to a whole set of social factors that actually play into that outcome. And so I think this is where it's really important that we have very, very diverse software coding and development teams. Otherwise, if that algorithm went into real life production, we could potentially be impacting many, many people's lives. You know, for example, if that didn't take into account, let's say, domestic abuse, just as one example, you know, that could have a really negative impact on a huge number of individuals.
Do you foresee then ethical commissions that will review these algorithms in these public cases or public situations?
I would very much hope so.
Yeah, that was one of our questions about government policy.
If I can add something else, this bias is not only coming from people that program the machine, but it's also coming from the data. Because as we all know, AI is data-driven. So it cannot learn past the data, it only learns features from the data. So if the data comes already biased, then there is little to do to unbias it. So this is one of the problems. But I understand your concern, and those are perfectly valid. After we've done the algorithm and after we've checked it, we have to thoroughly test it before putting it in production, and that's an important thing that may or may not happen today.
Do we ever see the opportunity for AI to learn how to unbias data? For it to learn over time? Is that what you were thinking? Yeah. Or cleaning it up somehow, pre-processing
it. Well, to unbias data, we first have to analyze it and discover ourselves the bias, which is a very tricky thing to do. And another thing, AI doesn't really learn well when data is not available. So in order to make it available, we do some sort of synthetic augmentation, which is not always giving the best results. So it's hard to unbias it, especially even though if you know where the bias is, it's hard to unbias it.
Great, thank you. Let's go over to this side of the room. Did we have any questions over here? Oh, I guess this side of the room is more. Oh, we do have one over there.
I am Nadia from Continental, and I would like to have a lot of AI in my life because that would make me smarter. But I have a question about the perception in the world. When we talk about AI, it looks like this is an international topic, very different cultures involved, so a very diverse topic. And will there be one way for the world how we work with robots in the future? Do you think they will also become culturally different solutions?
That's a good one. Will we have culturally sensitive robots? I don't know.
Well, I am pretty sure that they will be cultural different kind of robots, because here in Czech Republic, I can imagine that the robot is helping me doing some stuff because of culture, but maybe somewhere in India or China, where it's different religion, there could be some things which are, at least for some point of time, could be unacceptable, that robots will take care. And also, it's not only about culture, it's also about my personality, because maybe I am father and I don't want robots to take care for my kids. Or maybe other father, that's okay, let's them play together.
Actually, that's a great question. So do we see, how do we see children influencing AI in the future? Do we see how they might actually have maybe a bigger influence on the development of AI versus the adults?
Well, based on experience with my kids, I would say yes, they will be very happy to play with the AI and even program them. And maybe just do some tricks that parents don't even know what happened with those AIs.
Yeah, Lena, you're nodding your head too.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, all of us, or most of us in the room have kids, and we've experienced moments in our lives when kids were playing with our phones and they discovered some stuff that ourselves couldn't even look for it. It happened to me, so I believe that our future generation, the Z generation, will be the one that will have the most impact into the AI and the development and the use of AI into our day-to-day lives.
Kids are great beta testers. They find all those, find everything. Okay, who's ready for another one? You want to add some more? Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. Add some more.
Not adding some more, but our the last person who asked something, she said that AI will make her smarter. Can I ask why do you say that?
Oh, back at you. Wow, that's good.
Well, there's a lot of things I'm really bad at, and I would like to outsource out of my life because it could be done much better by someone knowing how to do that.
Well, actually, this will make only the robot smarter, but what you will do with the time that you have left, it's what makes you smarter.
But I'm also, I can learn, and I think I can learn from applications that will help me learn better.
Okay. Yeah.
So sometimes I personally learn more from watching how things are done, and that would be something where today teaching and everything is just front-loading and paper, and I expect AIs to be more tangible, something that I can grasp better by watching how things are done in a best way.
Okay, thank you very much.
Like ironing.
That would be great. That would be good. Do you want to make a comment related to that? Go ahead.
Hi, this is Arita. It's just interesting because you talked about culturally different robots, and then there was a question about how do we unbias these, probably biased data. So I was just wondering, is it possible to make these robots differently biased robots to talk to each other and maybe randomize the data set a bit? That might help, I don't know.
Thank you. Well, so I think in a lot of folks' minds, they jump to the robots and the AI, but there's a whole world of AI that has nothing to do with robots. Right? Can we maybe talk a little bit about that and how it may even be in existence and we don't realize it right now?
Sorry. Yes, to that I would give some examples from our lives. For example, the apps that we use to translate. They already exist and they make our life easier. We use them a lot. In the company that I work for in Emerson, we are already testing some bots to pull the data from our customers' orders and upload them into our business systems. That means that this will make the life easier of our employees, and we already think ahead holistically, how can we improve the job contents and get the best value added from our employees. So I believe that there's a bright future for that, and we as leaders in the organization, as quickly we adapt, as quickly we benefit of it.
You partially said what I was planning to say, but from aerospace perspective, one example where, of course, technology is still not ready yet, but airliners, usually when you are flying to vacation, each airplane has 2 pilots. But airliners are already looking for possibilities how to have just 1 pilot. And one of the examples why there are 2 pilots is if one pilot says something, he says check, and co-pilot must independently check if everything is really good. So if this co-pilot will be away, some smart intelligence must check, but not only what pilot did, but also if this pilot is conscious or whatever medical issue may have in that time. And that's very difficult to determine if this is pilot just tired or really something wrong is happening with him.
I think just to add to the first point, I think in our business-to-business interactions, typically our systems are actually not very well integrated, partly because maybe there's legacy environments, but also there's some decisions that need to be made between a customer placing an order and us receiving an order, for example. You know, they've ordered the right quantity, or they've increased it too much or decreased it too much. I think one of the critical roles of AI will be forming that interface with those simple rule sets that allow data to be accepted or rejected and activities to be made. I think that's probably where, and certainly I feel, and we're looking at this within Caterpillar, where we could get a huge amount of benefit. So it won't be a friendly little robot sitting next to you, sort of helping you with your job. It will be invisible in the integration between systems.
Thank you. So another question we have in the middle here. Great.
Hello. My name is Sangeeta. I'm part of Honeywell. So personally, I'm a great fan of AI. In yesterday's presentation, when I talked about machine values towards the human values, I got a lot of questions on concerns. And knowingly, unknowingly, I cannot deny the fact that are present, but still I was possessive inside towards the fact that AI is the future. Now, my question is, why are we suddenly trying to see so many rise on ideas about AI? Because it was not the case, let's say, a decade ago, but these were somewhere being developed in the background. And the second question is, what are the reasons that we are still slow and we are talking about the future and we cannot predict that it will be there in next 5 years? Is it human limitations?
I will quickly answer your second question by an example. The human body, the human mind can do a lot of things, and it learns throughout the life, but it performs a lot of tasks only by employing 2,000 calories a day, right? So without even eating, without only thinking, you burn only 2,000 calories a day. In order to do a computer, in order to make a computer think, only play, let's say, Go, the Go game that beat the best player at Go, it employed thousands of 1,000 more times the same energy. So I think the limitation comes in the fact that we cannot make a computer as a tenth of intelligent as a human being by paying a little cost. That's the first limitation. So it's hardware. It's how expensive is it to make a human, to imitate a human being with very little power.
I can try to answer first question. Well, one thing what I'm talking to people in my team is if you are doing something, same thing, third or fourth time, just think about how to automate it. And sometimes answer is, well, yes, but you need to think about this, about that, as another person, and maybe another dependencies. So it's so complicated that it's not very easy to do some automatic testing, for example, for some stuff. So I would say human nature is to be creative and just curious, but if you are doing something too many often, you are just boring. And you would like to, let somebody else do it. That's probably driver for this artificial intelligence.
So when does automation become artificial intelligence? Where is that line?
Well, that's great discussion. I had some discussion with few people here because we already have some automation today. And even in the airplane, autopilot, some people are saying, well, you have smart autopilots, they can just fly and you don't need pilots. But autopilot is deterministic, which means you are designing it and testing it based on strict rules. You exactly know what, when, and how will happen. But when autopilot detects that something is outside of this range, so he cannot be sure for 100% what to do, just turn off and waiting for pilot. And that's the limit where when artificial intelligence may step in. It will not be 100% decision for sure. It will be like human. Same things I will do different than any another person, even with the same level of experience and knowledge. We will be doing this little bit different, and that's what artificial intelligence will do as well.
I don't know if you noticed you said he when you were talking about the autopilot.
Unconscious bias, exactly.
But that's an interesting question. Let you answer what you wanted to say first, but then let's talk about that. Caroline wanted to add something.
It might not be unconscious bias. It might be that in his mother tongue, a pilot is actually masculine.
No, she was talking about the pilot. He's talking about the autopilot.
Anyway, it could be masculine. Yeah, true.
Just to add to your question, it was clearly a really good question. I think there's a matter of critical mass. So AI can't work unless the information is available. So unless your interactions as an individual are digitized, then AI can't work on them. So if I live a non-digital existence, I physically go to a supermarket, then there's no data for AI to work out my shopping preferences, for example. So I think over the course of the last 10 years, why it's been quite slow is we're gradually digitizing our existence. And that's being gathered by a couple of big platforms. Google is a great example. And so that's just providing an awful lot of food, if you like, for AI to work from. And I think that will just kind of continue to gather pace.
Thank you. So let's touch on this gender thing I just brought up, right? Right? Artificial intelligence, robot, and typically robots are neither male nor female, but more and more we're calling things he and she and not using it as much. So what are our feelings on that? I mean, are we giving these things emotions, feeling? Are we projecting onto them a gender?
I am pretty sure that yes, because I don't know, in psychology they are saying that maybe 95% of whatever you are doing is just automatic, it's just unconscious. So even when I can imagine I will have artificial intelligence in my home, robots cleaning or doing something, most of the time, because I have 3 brothers, I have 2 boys, I will be talking he. I'm pretty sure.
Anyone else want to add to that? No? Go ahead. It's a good question. It's a big topic.
I think it's just human nature. We personalize things, everything, really. I look at my daughter with her teddy bears. You know, she knows which one's he and she knows which one's she. I don't think our interactions with robots will be any different.
What do you all think? Do we think it's well, let's see, a lot of hands over here related to this topic. We have the mic over here, I think, somewhere.
Just a quick one. All 3 of them, Siri, Alexa, as well as Google Home, all 3 of them have female voices, so I call them her.
Mm-hmm. And why do you think that is? Why do we think it's because of maybe who programmed them?
Or the voice can be changed.
Or the voice can be changed, okay.
There is also a male voice.
Default voice is a female.
Probably people empathize more with women. I mean, it seems like it's not that intrusive. I have no clue.
Or are women typically the ones doing the errands and doing all the things that you're asking them to do?
I asked that Google, actually, because it interested me, and they said there's a psychology study that people tend to do less, they feel less conflict to follow things women say. My husband says the opposite, but maybe we will have a new multi-gender thing for robots. Maybe a robot in my home would be a male for me, because maybe I like him better, and maybe he is a she for my husband. I don't know.
Maybe. Somebody up in the front here had their hand up. In the blue? Yeah, up in the front.
Hi, so I'm Khushbu from GM. I just wanted to add a few things what she said, and just wanted to add a few points. So as we say, like AI is the new electricity. So when you say like why we are talking about all these things now, the big answer is about the big data. We don't have data previously, 5 years back or 10 years back. So recent developments in AI is because of the big data. And another one is like somebody asked for limitations. So I know, like I work in artificial intelligence, so there is many conflicts going on for the artificial intelligence in terms of the systems which are separated for each industry. So I can write a software for autonomous driving. The same software I cannot use for robot that is doing something in manufacturing or something related to any personal robot or any automation stuff. So we are right now struggling for the artificial general intelligence. So if you Google it, this is the latest study that are going on, GAI. So it's a general intelligence. So I don't need to write a separate software for each of the applications. So this is where we are heading, and so I don't know. I don't have any important question to ask about. Just wanted to add this thing.
Okay, thank you. Caroline, let's go back to the issue of government and policy and regulations. How do we think that that's going to evolve over time, or where do you see it going?
It's a good question. I think the Facebook Cambridge Analytica issue recently has been a little bit of a wake-up call, and it's come at a really good time. So it's come this month. I'm sure everybody knows the global data privacy regulations are coming out in Europe. So I think there we're seeing governments moving in to regulate at the same time as sort of scandals are bringing it to the forefront of people's minds that we have lots of big corporations who have an awful lot of our personal data. So I think it will continue to evolve. I know there is a lot of reluctance, I think, in the tech centers. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg is a good example, where his approach is that we should sort of allow things to evolve as they will, and this is a kind of free and kind of open world. But I think practically speaking, as these become more and more embedded in our everyday lives, they're going to have to be regulated.
Any other thing to add to that? No? Okay, we have a question right here. Great.
My name is Brigitte. I'm at Intel, Germany, and my husband is an engineer as well, so we are really a tech home. And we have a constant struggle on how to access data, how to make data accessible and not accessible to the outside world. And I find it really interesting, your point about government regulations. So it is just this time frame now where a new law about privacy rules has come into place, and now God in the world is sending out emails to people saying, ooh, this new rule is now coming into place. Would you like to reevaluate how you would like to handle your personal data? And all of my friends consistently just click that email away and get off and don't bother me with that. So I think raising the public awareness is one of the foremost issues that we have to tackle. To make people aware what can happen, what cannot happen. Also, try to not bring it into a panic mode. But this is what I see then in addition, rather than just bringing the regulations in, also for the governments and for independent bodies to bring up ways of making people aware. And I'm really struggling as an engineer to explain that to my non-engineering friends in a non-panicky way. So I don't know. I mean, maybe I have some ideas how to bring that up in a non-panicky but sensible way to do that.
I think it's a really interesting topic. So I mentioned before, my daughter's 6, and interestingly, her school is just starting to involve her in education about being safe online. Well, that was the problem 10 years ago. So, there's a huge lag there. They're not talking about data privacy, protecting your individual data, potentially protecting your personal security. So I think, sadly, we probably need a few case studies. But typically, this technology isn't maybe that well understood. So then you start saying, actually, we need some general education so that people can kind of engage in the topic. And then can make informed decisions. But I do fear that there will constantly be this sort of 5 to 10 year lag, and you'll be educating your friends forever.
Thank you. Alina, I wanted to ask you, we talked about this a little bit before, but I want to spend a little more time on the thought about augmented workforces and how it needs to change the way we teach engineers and what other things are going to need to have to get into the curriculum with the eventual integration of robots and other augmented workforce processes.
Yeah, so indeed, we previously touched-based it. I've read a recent article published by Deloitte. They made a study last year, and seems that the result was that it was a study done in industries in Europe, and they found out that about 66% of the companies that they interviewed already admitted that they started to use augmented reality in their business, and only about 20% had concerns regarding the disappear of some of the jobs. On the other hand, the other companies were mentioning that they are already working in and preparing their workforces for that. And they were mentioning that they hired highly skilled HR people in order to work on special programs for their employees to become acquainted more quickly than it is happening now. So if now a training of a new employee on a new business systems takes maybe 4 to 6 weeks, now they work on these soft skills, which seems to be the future required. If now we just hire people to do our order processing, do our engineers to do the quotations, now the study showed that those engineers that we hire would need to have more empathy, more AI. When they're dealing with the customers. The robots or the augmented reality will take part of some of their jobs, but that means that their job will evolve and the customers will get more value because of these soft skills that they will use in interacting with the customers.
Thank you. So Roxana, this goes to a related question on that balance between the reality of robots coming in versus the perception that they're going to take over everything, take over the world in some cases. So how do we deal with either the anxiety that people have or talk about more the reality of what's really going to happen?
I think an important point is to be honest about what AI can and cannot do. Because most of the times when big AI hats come at AI Tech Summits, they only show examples that have been tested 1,000 times before and will for sure not fail in front of everybody. But nobody talks about things that will fail the second time you change a word with its synonym. So I think we have to retrain people into understanding that AI is not here to take over their jobs, but only to complement them and to help them to be more productive. And as I said before, robots lack a lot of emotional intelligence and feelings that people will never, at least with the technology now, will never know how to program a robot to feel them.
Thank you. Another question? You're all just overwhelmed by this, right? Oh, Rochelle has a question, yep.
This is a big topic for
yeah, no, it is. It's a good one.
Yeah, it's about regulation and policy, and this problem of politicians have a lack of or a lag in their education or awareness of technical realities or advancements, and the shift of responsibility or ethical responsibility to tech makers and experts. is it possible, is that a possible reality that technical companies will have to take some responsibility in contributing to policy and not just looking at their bottom line?
That's a great question.
That's a great question, and I would compare this with the aerospace, because of course we have like framework with the regulations what every function in the airplane, how it must work, but most of the improvements are reactive. So it means when something happens, then regulation authority just going to investigate why it happened and what we can do to do it better. And that's the cycle. And in regulations, like for example for FAA or EASA, there are experts dedicated just for analyzing or aircraft accidents investigations. And something like this, I think, will happen or should happen with artificial intelligence, because politics, if politics will make regulations, then my kids will be much smarter to how to overcome those regulations.
So different perspective, I completely agree with your point. Different perspective on the same question is, currently a lot of these platforms are free. So things like Google and Facebook and so on, which I think are the ones that mostly concern people because of the size. So they're paid for and funded by advertising. So in its turn, advertising generates a mode of behavior that sort of drives you to want to maximize the number of clicks and the amount of interest. So that leads you to quite a sensationalist, if you like, and it's a fake news example. It drives a behavior through that platform that maybe is not the ethical best outcome. So I can kind of see where you might continue to have free platforms, but you might also continue to have paid platforms where there is a different ethical model. So you pay for the service and the quid pro quo is you are secure within that platform. Then you get the question about can those manage to scale and can they manage to integrate so you get the kind of holistic experience that you want. I guess I have no idea how quickly that debate is going to come to the public interest, but I think at the moment it's quite a monopoly. So as that monopoly becomes broken up, potentially with other different models of behavior and models of business, that might give people more choice and it might kind of raise those sort of issues.
It also sounds like we need to get more engineers and technologists into government to help out, right? We have time for one last question. Yes, over here, go ahead.
So my question is more about politics, and I'm in the U.S. We've been following, the Zuckerberg and the Facebook, and the comments about, well, because there's a lot of bias that's going on with that. If you don't have the same political views, they remove sites or remove things if they don't have the same political views as the people who either own that platform, Facebook, and word has been said, oh, well, if we, once we move more into artificial intelligence, we'll have less of that sort of thing coming up, and then of course it comes back to who's programming that, and then, in the U.S. we also have this discussion going on about, the Russians, participating in our, influencing our elections, and so, my thought and question really is there, it just seems like we're really rife for the possibility of artificial intelligence to be used to manipulate people's opinions, either by what the news that they see, and it could actually be, you think of the 1984, books and those kinds of things, where countries and political arms could actually manipulate the people through that artificial intelligence. And so, as a people, how do we, protect ourselves or be aware of those things so we don't have those things that happen, don't make it an opportunity for those things to happen.
Any comments?
Well, I will not be surprised if, well, I think I saw over the internet not so far, maybe weeks ago, where they were artificial intelligence was chatting with somebody, I don't know if it was on Facebook or on which chat, and this human was not able to recognize for some time that he's or she's talking with artificial intelligence. So it is already here, those kind of efforts and trials. And we as humans, I would compare this with the same situation if I'm talking with somebody and this other person is lying to me. How I am able to determine that he or she is lying to me? It's based on maybe my perspective, my knowledge, my experience, or I don't know, sixth sense or something. So that will be something similar with artificial intelligence, I guess, as well.
Thank you. So for our last remarks here, I've asked the panelists to think of something either inspiring or prediction for the future or some comment that they wanted to leave you with after today's discussion. So I hope that they've had a chance to think of it. And we'll start with Alina and we'll work our way back this way.
Okay, thank you. So my last note is we are all aware it's already here. Let's be open to it. Let's take the best out of it and prepare ourselves for the future.
Thank you.
My last note is just in case if regulations will decide we are not going to make artificial intelligence, then other side could be that they are forcing us humans to behave as robots. Because in that case, maybe we will be forced to do same things again and again in factories. And that's something what I'm sure we don't want.
Thank you.
I would say that we should be less scared that robots will take over the world and be more aware with how and with who we share our data, because that's what is more important. I mean, it's the risk that you're not aware of, and it's probably the highest one.
Thank you.
Just really to add to that point, last month I bought a robot lawnmower. It's really stupid. It is more stupid than a sheep. So there is no danger of them taking over the world anytime soon. But to echo your point, I kind of engage proactively.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for participating. Thanks for all the great questions. Please give our panelists a round of applause.